So there's a lot
Yeah,
actually to unpack
yeah,
here, right? Random encounter in the wild.
and a bit different from other encounters we've seen so far.
I like the odd snowmobile aspect of like, nah, we're just gonna jump on our snowmobiles and get out of here. All right, welcome everybody to Unraveling the Unexplained. My name is Kat, and I'm a longtime astral traveler and spirit consultant. This is my brother John, longtime fan of the creepy and the paranormal.
Hello, folks.
He has picked out a video for me to react to. I don't know what it is, but we are about to find out together.
Welcome in, everyone.
Welcome.
All right, folks, buckle up.
You bet.
Today we're heading back to 1980s France, where things got a whole lot weirder than anyone would have a reason to expect. Picture this. A man, minding his own business, ends up face to face with some strange beings. And just when you think it couldn't get more bizarre, they start talking about demons and human abductions. Then, as if straight out of a fever dream, they fly off on ghostly snowmobiles, leaving nothing but questions in their wake. Yeah, this one's a wild ride.
So stuff gets weird, right?
Yeah.
Especially since humans tend to interpret the vibration that they're witnessing through the lens of their own understanding.
Yeah,
And it can produce some weird,
trippy situations.
yeah, some weird stuff. So let's see what this guy's subconscious produced for him out of this interaction, because I've seen a lot, but I've never seen aliens on snowmobiles talking to me about demons before. So let's see what this guy's got going on.
1987. All the cool stuff happened in the 80s.
On December 12th, 1987, at approximately 10:50 in the morning, an encounter took place in Malvézy, about 3 kilometers north of Narbonne, a site known for its uranium processing plant. The location was a plateau on the side of a hill, elevated 15 to 20 meters above the road. The witness, whom we will refer to as Georges Lenoir to preserve his privacy, is a 40-year-old former restaurateur and music composer with a 16-year-old daughter. What began as an ordinary outing took an unusual turn when, while searching for wood near Malvézy, the witness came face to face with strange figures and unusual vehicles. To investigators, Georges gave the following account of events. In order to have a barbecue, I decided to go collect wood near Malvézy, as I often do. Upon reaching the demolished building, I stopped my car and walked toward the rubble, where I hoped to find pieces of planks and beams. After advancing about 6 or 7 meters, I found myself facing 6 people near 4 vehicles resembling snowmobiles. Under their awkward stares, I momentarily abandoned my plan to gather wood and approach this strange group of individuals, rather short, with Asian features, who seemed to be taking shelter under a hedge of shrubs. According to Georges, the vehicles were about 1.5 meters long and 0.4 meters high, and could seat 1, 2, or even 3 figures straddling them. These vehicles had no visible instruments or control mechanisms, no engine, no wheels, no handlebars. Their color was an off-white shade. When I get closer, about 2 meters away, I don't notice anything unusual apart from the peculiar vehicles. So, to start a conversation, I say, "Hello, nasty weather today." I then hear some nasal, incomprehensible sounds. I persist. "Are you from around here?" The second figure from the left, who looks somewhat effeminate, speaks 2 words I don't understand. Thinking I'm dealing with pranksters, I continue, "Oh, so you're extraterrestrials," while looking around for hidden cameras, imagining I'm on the set of a film. The second figure then approaches me, squats down, and draws 2 symbols on the wet ground, one resembling the Greek lowercase letter gamma, the other a C. Simultaneously, in a nasal voice, they say, "Sky, demon." I still don't take the situation seriously, and playing along with what I believe is a prank, I say, "Is it better on your planet?" The second figure, who is the only one to have spoken and appears to be female, replies with 2 words, "Less work." The outlandish nature of this encounter doesn't faze me, and I continue my questions. How do these vehicles work? Magnetic. The rain bothers us, no relay with base. You're like us, there's air on your planet. I continue. Pointing to the first figure, the woman says, "9th century." Then pointing to the 5th, 13th century. At that moment, figure number 1 steps forward, extends their hand and says, "Arctic Pole." I had no intention of shaking their hand. Did they even want me to? But driven by curiosity, I brushed my hand against theirs and noted that their skin, if it could be called that, felt particularly cold. I kept a close watch on the group and noticed that they exchanged looks which seemed to convey not only concern, but disagreement about continuing the encounter, especially our conversation. As the woman said, "You do not interest us, but a few humans are leaving with us," a seventh figure appeared on my right. He seemed annoyed by the situation, even somewhat angry. He addressed the group in a nasal, incomprehensible voice, appearing to be in a near trance state. Immediately, they mounted the vehicles resting on the ground. Without a sound, without even causing the grass to stir, and without any visible action by the pilots, the vehicles lifted off gently. They rotated in place, and then headed off to my right, moving toward the top of the hill. Their speed was slow, and they gained altitude very gradually, only reaching 3 to 5 meters above the ground by the end of the observation. Suddenly, I perceived a high-pitched noise, hard to describe, as if it were coming from inside my head. This was followed by a brief loss of consciousness, although, curiously, I remained standing. I must have been unconscious for only a few seconds. I do not think I could have fallen, because when I regained my senses, I noticed my clothes were not muddy. I was shaken by the experience, and I returned home without having collected any wood. I arrived at my house at 11:15 a.m. In the early afternoon, I returned to the site with my daughter. Apart from 4 or 5 round marks, 10 centimeters in diameter, in the grass, I noticed nothing tangible that could support my observation. The encounter lasted only a few minutes. 4 of them were about 1.5 meters tall, while the other 3 stood at around 1 meter, which made him think they might have been children. Their skin was earth-colored, and aside from a few horizontal wrinkles at the lower corners of their noses, there weren't any features that really stood out from human traits. The clothing, dark in color and identical for all, consisted of a jumpsuit that extended into a form-fitting hood, with the exception of 2 individuals. The witness believes he saw hair. 2 of them appeared to be female, although this assumption was based solely on their delicate facial features. Around the hair or hood area, those who seemed to be the children displayed a silvery white coloration. The witness noted that, if this was indeed hair, it must have been cut very close to the scalp, although he could not provide further details. These extraterrestrials weren't very talkative, treated humans with a certain disdain, and made us wonder why they were in such an unimpressive spot.
So there's a lot actually to unpack
Yeah.
here, right? Random encounter in the wild.
And a bit different from other encounters we've seen so far.
Yeah, and primarily not interested in communicating with people that have difficulty communicating with them. You can see that there's translation issues. It's
Yeah.
difficult to make really what they're trying to say come across in human language or to human understanding.
Like they're trying to communicate certain things, but the words are probably getting a little mixed up. Meaning is getting a little crossed.
Yeah, I have definitely come across personalities that have this kind of an attitude where they sort of come across as a little bit condescending, a little bit I don't know,
Standoffish.
what would come across to us as a sort of superior attitude, or it like difficulty communicating and kind of like, what is the point of talking to you? You don't really understand me. So I've come across personalities that certainly have that kind of a behavior. I've never cared for it. I'm interested by the attempt to communicate. It interests me that when the individual was pointing at the other ones and telling them, whatever, 6th century, 13th century. Yeah,
century.
that makes it feel like these, almost like saying like these personalities have been here before, right? Whether they incarnated here in these centuries or they've come as part of other, groups, like been here previously to check up on humanity in these centuries, right? That it's sort of giving that. Is it like it is for you guys and they're like less work, like we're not toiling the way that you guys are.
And like when the first thing they say is sky demons after making the little symbol. I think that's them trying to like introduce themselves.
Yeah
And it's like that's just how the word comes across,
that's how the word came out.
They are from the sky or can be seen in the sky. Demon doesn't necessarily have to have an evil connotation. It's just a spirit thing.
Yeah, it's his translation to the best that he can of the vibration that he's receiving. And so depending on what kind of frame of mind and what your own background is, you're going to translate that. Some people would have translated or seen it more as like sky angels, or some people would have. So the implication with that is non-physical or non-spirit form, right? Not necessarily not human, not necessarily of here, not necessarily as physical and that it's coming across through his translation as demon, because what else are you gonna call it, right?
And then you got like the one guy that apparently was angry or not happy about the conversation happening. Like there was disagreement in the group about the attempt at communication.
And I've definitely had that experience before as well. I've ended up in spheres of reality and other places where I've had, some individuals trying to communicate with me and tell me things, and then I've had individuals that were with them going, why not just tell her everything then? They're like angry about it. Like, why telling so much? So I have on previous occasions from certain kinds of personality types, gotten the impression that they're not necessarily supposed to tell us everything. That's not necessarily authorized individuals only for this information.
Like there's some sort of rules of engagement for trying to communicate with humans.
Right. And that, not all of them necessarily, like some are more interested in trying to make contact and trying to communicate. Others who are a little bit more strict. I've often gotten the impression, and again, not among all personality types that are out there, but certain like groups of individuals, that's very much like there is some sort of bureaucracy or structure going on where they do have some sort of, like you said, rules of engagement or something they're supposed to be doing. Although in that with that particular group of interaction, I've never been able to get any one of them to be particularly clear with me on what exactly that is.
Yeah.
But no, this is definitely an interesting encounter. I like that they were like, we're just here. We're some people coming with us, but we're not particularly interested in you. So you are unauthorized personnel at this point, basically.
We're gonna go now.
This is a wild encounter that shouldn't be happening right now. Just a chance encounter.
Not even a prime location for observing the uranium refinery nearby. Does it really make sense to believe that beings with unimaginable knowledge ended up near Narbonne, using vehicles that couldn't handle moisture, and had a bizarrely trivial conversation with an Earthling, before taking off under the orders of an irritable leader?
Question mark, right? That speaks to it all. They were there for particular individuals, right?
Yeah.
So I think we have the impression that there's some greater purpose or some greater meaning. They do tend to hang out around nuclear sites or whatever.
I think it has something to do with the energy produced by those sites that's of interest to them. They said something about magnetism in the Arctic pole as well.
Yeah, which is already a lot of information. And we've talked before about like how obviously there was something going on with ancient civilizations where they understood how to move heavy objects using something that we're missing something out of what we're doing about the ways that things were being done previously.
There are certain elements of energy and physics that we don't quite understand that other groups like this do, and they're clearly interested in us because I think maybe nuclear energy is something that's of interest just because maybe how it affects things for them. Like clearly if magnetism is important to them, there are energies in our world that kind of affect theirs and vice versa.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the ability for a still developing species to suddenly to come up with the idea of let's tear apart matter fundamentally to create massive amounts of energy. We're humans, I've said this before, humans are cleverer than we are wise, right? So we're like the children that want to stick a fork in the electrical socket to see what happens. Taking matter apart at the fundamental, like deconstructing matter to create chain reactions at a fundamental level that it comes with that much energy is potentially has not great side effects, right? And we're not stupid. We're aware that this potentially has not great side effects. So that becomes the point at which I think things have to be monitored probably a little bit more closely. I would imagine, personally.
Well, it's like when you hear about UFOs, especially recently, a lot of them are reportedly appearing near like nuclear sites and such.
Yeah. We're discovering a lot, but we're not necessarily exercising the wisdom that goes along with that. We still very much have.
We figured out this nuclear energy thing instead of utilizing it to create clean, effective, efficient energy for all of civilization. We built thousands and thousands of bombs that could destroy our planet.
Yeah, we're still very much in the be mad at the other, take over things from other people, let's be aggressive, kind of state with things right now. And to have that kind of the capabilities like that, again, we're cleverer than we are wise. We haven't wised up to how to chill out and use some of this technology in a more productive fashion.
Yeah.
So we've got humanity's got some inner work to do, right?
This case is especially intriguing because of the basic conversation the witness managed to have with the beings. Though limited in scope, this exchange adds a new dimension to our understanding of symbolic interaction in such encounters. A symbolism expert might interpret this dialogue as more than just simple communication, potentially pointing to universal symbols or shared archetypes. The gestures, tone, and nonverbal cues could hold clues that warrant closer examination. What else could be gleaned from this case? Do we have to admit that our intelligence and awareness just aren't sharp enough to catch the subtleties of a message meant for us? One that these so-called extraterrestrials don't even bother to make understandable? This story is full of strange details that push the line between what seems possible and what feels absurd. That in itself adds to the credibility of the experience, since it matches so many others. If the witness had made up a hoax, he would have likely come up with a more believable story. If we could have backed up this sighting with other testimonies or physical evidence on the ground, our logical minds would be more at ease. Even so, the investigators were convinced of the witness's sincerity. Arctic pole, sky demon, magnetism, base. These few words are sure to capture all of our imagination. Why did the beings evoke demon among these other terms? The word demon originates from the Latin demon, tracing back to the daimonic beings of Greek mythology. These figures were seen as powerful intermediaries, bridging the human and divine worlds, and often offering guidance or protection. Over time, these beings evolved in the collective imagination, shifting from benign or neutral spirits to symbols of disorder. They became minor gods, then shadows of themselves, eventually taking on darker connotations as malevolent forces. The early Christians also added to the cultural splintering of the word demon. Modern interpretations of demons are associated with supernatural spirits that act as evil tormentors and seducers, causing misfortune to humans. Scholars suggest that the symbolism of demonic imagery is rooted in the fears and beliefs of ancient humans, who had genuine reasons to be aware of the chaotic forces of nature and the complex workings of the human mind. If these beings spoke of a demon, what archetype or message did they intend to convey? Was it the archaic benign emissary of old myths, guiding and guarding humanity? Or was it the devilish sprite of mischief, harbinger of chaos and destruction? This case becomes even more captivating when considering the
We kind of talked about this already, but literally when they're conveying a vibration to you or conveying a communication, your mind is going to make the nearest translation that it can. And so when it's conveying the idea of a non-physical entity this is from a realm that's not from here, right? When it's trying to convey that idea, because it's for most humans, this is not something they're aware of, like an extra dimensional being of non-physical origin. It is like, this is not an idea that's prevalent in public consciousness for most people. And so that word is going to get translated into the closest thing that person can make out of what's being conveyed. And for this gentleman, that the closest translation for that was demon, right? Because they're not giving love and light, they're not giving warm and welcoming, so this is getting translated in more of the negative context to him than the positive one. They're standoffish and kind of looking down on you, so it's not, they're not giving the love and light energy. You're not getting angelic presence off of this. You're getting more of the negative connotation. So my guesstimate would be that the demon was the closest translation this particular individual could make out of that communication.
Yeah, makes sense.
myths tied to Arctos, the poles, their shifts, and the Earth's tilted angle, all converging with the legends of Hyperborea, a mythical land beyond the north wind, known as a realm of perpetual sunlight and strangeness. The Earth's tilt causes extreme conditions at the poles, such as long periods of light and darkness. This helps explain why Hyperborea represents more than just a physical place. It symbolizes the polar regions as mysterious and transformative, where the normal rules of nature shift. The idea that these areas could act as thresholds to the unknown might shed light on why the strange being in Narbonne referenced this place.
I would assume
Demon and Arctic poles.
I would assume that the mention of the poles and magnetism is another attempt at communicating how the travel, how things are actually working.
Yeah.
And again, for humans who are not connecting, the magnetic energy of the earth and to some sort of power that's harnessable to perpetuate something like this, the closest reference they can make is, magnetisms and the poles, like.
Yeah.
And the translation just isn't coming through very clearly because the base concept of understanding isn't there to the person who's being communicated with.
Sky and base. In the end, this encounter gave us a glimpse behind the veil, only to leave us staring at the mystery, challenging us to solve it on our own. Tell us how you see things. How do you assess this testimony?
I just did.
Yep.
The source material for this episode comes primarily from Lumière dans la nuit, or Lights in the Night, issues 291 and 292 from 1988. Feel free to add to our comment section and join the conversation. If you like this content, you can support our continued efforts by dropping us a like, or better yet, subscribe to our channel.
And we totally will. We will link this in the description. Go check them out. Show them some love. They appreciate that. So do we. Short but sweet. I like that.
Yeah, it was an interesting encounter. We've done other ones where aliens have come out to people, but rarely have they ever been all that talkative,
Well, I appreciate this one because like I was mentioning, I have encountered personalities that behave very much this way. They do seem to have some sort of organization. They do seem to have some sort of purpose that they're up to or thing that they're doing. They can come off as snobby or,
a little
looking down on people.
Yeah.
Which for me, for, a long number of years was an irritation to me, to my energy. Like if I'm asking you questions, just answer the questions. Do you know what I mean?
Don't get all dodgy about it.
Right. Because when you start acting dodgy, it starts making us feel like, what are you hiding? Like that was always very sus to me. Like, what are you doing? And why? I mean, if you can't just answer the question, what do you want here? That's that makes you feel sus about it, right? Like, why can't you just answer the question? But it took a long time, a lot of numbers of years interacting with personalities like this to understand that, like, even in attempts to explain what was going on, they can't communicate it clearly because we don't have the base conceptual understanding of what it is they're trying to explain. So,
it can maybe be understanding that they're a little frustrated and maybe even a little condescending about it because, I mean, they clearly know stuff we don't. And
yeah, and it would be it's difficult to explain concepts that we have no general understanding of. Like we don't even have language to convey some of these ideas.
Like,
so
we might come off as a little snobbish if we were trying to communicate with a group of people that had no concept of our technology and we were trying to explain how it works.
Yeah, if you traveled back to the 9th century with your cell phone and we're trying to explain how internet works. I mean, I know people today that can't explain internet. It's like this magic sky beam that comes into you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I know people today that couldn't explain how information travels into nowhere, into the ether, right?
Yeah.
So it would be difficult to explain if you were traveling back to the 9th century to try and explain concepts that people have no frame of reference for at all.
And if
that
you
makes
tried,
communication really difficult.
And if you tried, you'd probably come off as maybe a little arrogant as you were trying to explain how your fancy internet magic worked.
Yeah, you would end up being very much like picture box information.
Yeah. You might not be intending it to come off that way, but it probably
magic
would.
knowing. Like, you would have difficulty explaining it in any kind of way that would be understandable too. So that sort of an attitude, I think, is not necessarily
malicious or whatever.
Malicious.
It's the frustration that comes through a difficulty in communication.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of communication that we get from the other side, for people who are mediums, people who are channelers, the information does come through in like words or phrases, pictures of certain things, imagery, right? And there is a period of, like, what for us we call it integration, right? Where the knowing has an integration period in order to make sense out of anything, pieces of information that you're getting, especially if you're getting information about concepts that are not things that are 3D physical concepts. So this sounds very much to me like a dude who just happened to be out gathering firewood and stumbled upon, something that was not necessarily intended for him. I know the feeling. In astral travels, like, I've definitely stumbled into realms and spheres of activity that are things that were not necessarily.
They were not expecting visitors.
They were not expecting visitors, exactly. And it generates a lot of misunderstanding for humans. Like, I spent a long time, a number of years, as I was coming up through it, irritated and angry. Like, if you don't want to tell me what's going on, then what are you doing in my head? You know, like it was an invasion of my privacy that now they don't want to explain. And it took me a number of years before I finally got the communication through or understood, like, we're not in, you're out. Right. And that was a big mind fuck for me. Like, oh,
they're not coming into your head. You're going into their space.
Exactly. And I didn't understand that that's what had been happening. So there was a lot for me perspective wise that shifted once I understood that, like, my astral travels had taken me far afield, you know. I had been interpreting this situation as some sort of psychic communication, like they were coming to me, they were in my head, but it turns out, no, I had ended up pretty far afield of where I was normally going, and I was in their space, right, interacting. Yeah. So it helped a lot understanding that. It's like, oh, that's why they're irritated at me, because I kind of barge into their space and demand answers from them.
Yeah. Might explain some of their own standoffishness.
Exactly. So that understanding helped a lot, right? In this case, they're here, but they're not here for you, bro. Like, they're here to communicate with other people, or here to
they're doing their own thing.
Right, they're here doing their own thing. And so this, you know, the attempt at communication was there. But when it became clear that this guy was just like,
this is just some random French dude who's
like, shitty weather, eh? You know?
Yeah, and the leader gets annoyed. He's like, okay, let's get on our freaking
this is a waste of time, and he's not going to understand this. And, you know, the attempt was made at communication. Somebody tried to give us symbols or information, but it was not obviously registering or clicking what was actually going on.
Yeah.
So that's what it sounds like to me is happening in this situation.
All right, yeah, sounds like makes sense to me.
I like the odd snowmobile aspect of, like, nah, we're just gonna jump on our snowmobiles and get out of here.
Their own little transports.
And I always like it when normal people, like regular people, you know, they're like, you know what, I don't know what this is, but I'm gonna report it.
Oh yeah, the guy.
I'm gonna add to the record.
This French guy was 100% calm, just engaged with the situation, didn't freak out. And once it was all done, he's like, "Well, that was weird. I guess I'll go report it."
Right, and I feel it, and that's the right. He has the right idea to remain calm, and it takes a certain kind of, like, chill, open-minded person not to immediately freak out. Like, there are a lot of people in this world that the minute you saw weird black dressed figures in a field that called themselves sky demons would have panicked immediately and fled the situation.
Yeah, don't do that in America. Sky demons, they might shoot at you.
yeah. There's a lot of people who would freak out at that context and run away or start screaming, you know, Jesus rebukes or whatever, and that wouldn't have been helpful to the situation at all. Yeah. So at least this is a guy who's remaining calm and was able to carry on a conversation without the hysterics. I'm interested in the symbols that they used, and I'll have to look those up and look into, like, more of the meaning on those. The video didn't go too much into any kind of explanation of what those symbols
are. But they put the symbols down as they were saying sky demon, so I guess maybe it's their attempt at a written form of their.
Well, they said it was the symbol for gamma and then a C, which I believe is a Roman numeral also, isn't it?
Maybe. I don't know my Roman numerals.
I can't remember, like. Just Future Cat jumping in with a little bit of a research update. Well, I guess it's still past Cat to you, but future from the one that's in the video, and, well, whatever. First of all, C is a Roman numeral that is actually for the number 100. And the number 100 relates to gamma in a couple of different ways. The first is gamma rays. I'm going to read it. A 100 MeV or megavolt gamma ray refers to a gamma ray photon with an energy of 100 million electron volts, which is considered very high energy level within the gamma ray spectrum. These rays are highly penetrating and can only be detected by specialized instruments. These high-energy gamma rays are often observed from extreme cosmic events like gamma ray bursts, supernova, and active galactic nuclei. Now, the other way in which this relates is gamma waves. So gamma waves are a neutral oscillation in the brain that indicates the synchronization of nerve cells working together to perform specific functions. 100 hertz is the high end of gamma waves. They sound a bit like this. So it looks like gamma brain waves are a very high frequency brain wave that is usually it's when you're like highly focused or highly in tune to something, paying attention and all systems firing on all cylinders basically, or at least that's kind of what I'm getting from reading this. You can find videos of them on YouTube. Apparently they're sometimes used for meditation practices. Feel free to look into it yourself. I find that the gamma wave tone at 100 hertz is kind of interesting. It sort of reminds me of what our French gentleman here was saying about the tone he was hearing before he kind of like phased out and then came to a little bit later at the end of the interaction. And who knows, maybe the gamma energy is all about, you know, how they're powering their vehicles or something else going on. And now we will jump back. That many of my Roman numerals, but I believe it is. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah,
Also,
neither
let
of
us
us.
know if there's a phenomenon, an incident, something that, you know, that you'd like us to throw up on here on the thing and do a reaction to.
Yeah.
This is definitely one that I've never heard of before, but I like it. It seems like a genuine encounter. Yeah, let us know. That's what I got on this one.
All right.
Interesting encounters in 1980s France.
Indeed.
Yep. Check out the other video. Like, subscribe, and
Have a good one, folks.
we'll see you later. Bye.